Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Ask Dr. Callahan Facebook Live. I am coming to you today to talk with you about why you should let it go, of cumulative reviews. I'm just realizing that I have my coat back there, so you can see that. I'm highly distractible. What I wanted to talk to you about today is, a lot of times in math, you'll see this at the end of the textbook, or certainly as we come into April and the end of the year, a lot of educators and parents and teachers like to do cumulative reviews. And it's basically a giant test where you have to prove that you know everything that you covered over the whole course, all at one time. And to me, just the description of that is overwhelming, and certainly for a student it is. And I don't think it's necessary, and here's a couple reasons why. One, the point of a course is not for your student to be able to regurgitate a bunch of facts. That's not why we educate, and it's not a good measure of whether or not you learned something. And you can think about that. Anything that you memorize, it's not the memorization of it that teaches you it, it's the application. It's when you use what you memorize that you learn it. And with math, this is just especially true, whether it's formulas or the Pythagorean theorem or how to convert from radians to degrees, all of these different processes that you're going to learn in your math course. It's important that you understand what you're doing. It's important that you understand how to do it, and it's important that you be able to show you know how to apply it. But I don't think it's necessary for you to take one big giant test. And you think about the way a math course works. You've spent the last 9 months, 30 some odd weeks, for some students it's a full calendar year, learning this material, and in one day someone walks up and says, tell me what you did on January 7th a year ago, and if you can't tell me, then you didn't learn this subject and you're not ready to go forward. It's just very, very stressful. And so here's some things I think you can do instead of a cumulative review. One, I would focus on a project, and I say this as a replacement for the cumulative review specifically and intentionally. Whenever you do a project, you get the option of applying all of the subjects at once. If you've ever tried to build a table, work on a car, even put together some of those Lego kits, you understand that there's a lot of process involved with it, right? And so when you do a math project, whether it's research-based or a paper, or maybe you research a key mathematician, you're going to apply a lot of the concepts that you learned over the year, especially if the project assigns you to apply several of the projects over the course of the year. And to me, that's a better way of gauging whether or not your student can engage with those formulas, can demonstrate their usefulness, and can demonstrate their ability to apply accurately the formulas in correct places, than just merely having them write down, the formula for the Pythagorean theorem in their test, or even being able to work 60 problems correctly. To me, it's better if the student can show they know how to engage with it. Now, here's another thought about why I would not stick with cumulative reviews. One of the things that we tell our students when they're going through our typical course sequence of algebra, geometry, algebra 2 with trig, that's also called pre-calculus, and then calculus 1 for their senior year. When you're going through that, we tell even the students going into calculus 1 as a 12th grader to hang on to their algebra textbook. And the reason we do that is because in a giant calculus problem, you will apply algebra formulas, algebra systems in the solving of those calculus problems. And it's just a huge help to students if they have their algebra book and they can go back, and it's the one that they used, it's the one they're familiar with, they've already flipped through those pages, and they can go through and say, oh, I see, I remember now how to do this. And they flip and they flip and they say, oh, okay, I see this. So then that's how I do that. Then they bring that back over to their calculus problem and they can finish out the calculus problem. So since that's true, you think about that in a micro way of, nobody questions that student's ability to do calculus just because they had to go back and reference the algebra book to finish out the last few steps of a problem. And in the same way, you shouldn't judge an algebra student's completeness or whether or not they have studied enough algebra to be able to move on by whether or not they can merely regurgitate things they learned 9 months ago. There needs to be a better standard, a better way. And so I would caution you about doing cumulative reviews, and instead, as they go along, have them demonstrate their mastery of the subject incrementally. Whether that's, we do chapter tests as part of our course. Every chapter they're going to take a test. Every few lessons they have a quiz, and we recommend projects and activities. And so there's several different places that you can get a feel for whether or not your students understand the material, whether or not they are grasping what they're learning. And then if they get to the end of Algebra 1 or they get to the end of geometry and they've done well at each of those checkpoints, then you could feel confident that they're ready to go into the next course without needing to do some kind of comprehensive year-long review test that has them, just go back through 13 chapters of material on one exam, which is hugely overwhelming and quite taxing to them mentally for a purpose that I'm not sure accomplishes the greater goal of having them be well educated in mathematics. So that's just my thoughts. And hopefully these are suggestions that I use when I used to teach this class as co-op classes for homeschool students. I taught Algebra through Calculus 1. These are just things that we did in my classroom. I would use the Ask Dr. Callahan curriculum and put it into a co-op class. And this worked really well for students. Being able to engage with the material, being able to show their mastery of it as we went along and not have to do the big giant test. It worked really well. So I hope some of these ideas work well for you. And I hope it helps you feel a little bit less nervous when you get to the end of Algebra 1 and they can't tell you without looking what they did back in the first chapter. I hope you are encouraged that that's okay. What you want is for them to be able to go back and read that chapter 1 and go, oh yeah, I know how to do that, and let me show you that I know how to do that. And so these are kind of small differences, but I hope they make a big impact for your class as you go through it. And as always, if you have questions about your child's readiness for a different course or which one's supposed to come next, we have lots of resources on the Ask Dr. Callahan website, and you are always welcome to email us and ask. We love to help parents navigate this as best we can. So thank you very much for joining me today on the Ask Dr. Callahan Facebook Live. I will see you guys next Thursday. Bye, everybody.